Eileen Butler, are you willing to speak with me? I'm just curious about your life here at Dunrobin Castle. She's saying that it was a dark and miserable childhood that she lived through. She would travel quite a bit. She says it's so easy to get trapped in the world that you make and then feel very small. But when you travel, you feel like you are a part of something larger. It was a form of freedom to get out of the trappings of her own mind. So I'm curious, what was it like to live in the 1920s in Scotland? It was so dark during that time. People were desperate to celebrate. She's saying it's like a watercolor painting where the gray just bleeds into more gray. Then once the war ended, there was color brought to this painting and she could be happy. She says there are so many little moments throughout the day, and if you let them slip by, you're missing the chance to smile. So don't let the little moments pass you by and miss the opportunity of receiving the gift and giving it back to someone else. My name is Eluña. I'm an Akashic channeler and a psycho-spiritual healer, and I am currently at Dunrobin Castle in Scotland, very north Scotland actually, right on the water. It's quite beautiful here. And I just finished touring this castle and I spontaneously asked a portrait. I asked the energy of a portrait of a woman named Eileen Butler, a duchess actually, Eileen Butler. I asked if I could take a picture of her portrait because she's beautiful. And when I asked, she responded. And so I thought maybe she would be willing to talk with me more. And she said that she was. And she also told me that no one has ever asked to take a picture of her portrait before. So maybe that's one of the reasons why she's willing to talk to me. But she seems like a very interesting person. So I'm just going to connect with her and see what comes through. I don't know anything about her other than the fact that I think she was alive in the 1920s and her name is Eileen Butler. That's it. That's all I know. And she's very beautiful. So we'll see what happens. Hi everyone! I am so excited to tell you about an event that is coming up at the very beginning of 2025. So on January 3rd to the 5th, I am going to be a workshop presenter and channeler at the channel panel event, The Dawn of Disclosure. You can find out more information about that at thechannelpanel.com. And if you'd like to see more about the workshop that I am going to be doing, you can go to my Instagram page. There is all kinds of information there. And I am so excited to meet you in person if you choose to come there and see me. I would love to see your face. Eileen Butler, are you willing to speak with me? Okay, thank you. So, I'm just curious about your life here at Dunrobin Castle and what it was like to live in this space. Where did you grow up, if you want to share about that? You don't want to talk about your childhood. Okay. Okay, she's saying that it was a dark and miserable childhood that she lived through, and so she really does not enjoy talking about it. It's when she was finally free of her family that she started to experience more happiness and really learned what joy was. So she's saying that as she got older, she did not take little joys for granted. There were small moments, she said, that could have been overlooked by others, but she did not overlook them because her childhood had been quite miserable. And so she could just appreciate little things, and it made her a rather gay person to be around, happy person to be around. She said that. And so she had a pretty wide circle of friends and many people who would visit her and that she would go to visit very, very frequently, she says. Interesting. She says she actually didn't spend that much time in this castle. It was rather dreary, which is what I kept feeling when I was in that castle. So she's saying that she would travel quite a bit. Whenever she could, she would go stay with other people. And she was, okay, interesting. She's just saying she was able to see a lot of different places throughout Scotland and England for that reason. Because she could, and France, she said as well, because she could go stay with many friends, and she would stay for months at a time, a month or more at a time. And so she was able to get quite a rich experience of culture, which is quite beautiful. Okay. And she's saying traveling is one of her favorite things to do. Helps you get out of yourself, she says. What do you mean? She says it's so easy to get trapped in the world that you make and then feel very small in that world. But when you travel, you feel bigger and you feel like you are a part of something larger, and you get to learn and experience things that otherwise you would not. And so it allowed her to, it was a form of freedom to get out of the trappings of her own mind. Right. Okay. She's describing that her husband was not very fond of this, but also he was rather stern. But she was kind of the light of his life. I can see that energetically. She really lit up his life and brought a lot of joy. And so he let a lot of things go that otherwise he really would not have. Being a duke, he would not have let it go, but he did, because he loved her. And she was so joyous that she kind of made him say yes to a lot of things that he otherwise would not have said yes to. So that's rather sweet. They had, yeah, do you feel like there was love there? It doesn't look like that. I was just energetically looking at their relationship, and the connection is clearly she gives more energy to him. And so I was asking her if she felt like there was love there. She says, what is love anyway? Other than laughter shared amongst friends, what is love? And she says that she did not share that many times of laughter with him, but it was enough for her, and it was more than enough for him. And she says it would not have been enough if she couldn't leave, but because she could leave, it was enough. Okay. So I'm curious, how did you two even get married? Why did you get married? Arranged by the family. Okay. For what purpose? To keep the money in the family. So how did you two meet then? Interesting. Also arranged. She's saying that was common in those days, that meetings would be arranged for prospective and potential people who are upper class to meet each other. Because by this time, people were not going to court like they had been in earlier centuries. This was the 20th century. So it was actually rather difficult to meet people if it was not already arranged, or if you did not already have a family connection of some kind. You really didn't meet a lot of people. Interesting. She's saying that's also part of the reason why people would marry their cousins, because they really only knew their family. Unless they had a way to network or meet someone else, you really did not meet a lot of people. It just was not common back then. It's very interesting. Okay. She's saying at least in the circles that they run in. It's interesting. Okay. So I'm curious, what was it like to live in the 1920s in Scotland? Was it exciting like it was in the United States, or? Okay, she's saying not like it was in the United States, but still exciting because there were so many new ideas and new ideas and new ways of being, new ways of living, new ways of seeing the world were all kind of floating around. And it was just after a war. And so people were really in a place of, oh, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. She's saying people were desperate to celebrate. They were desperate to be joyful because of living through the First World War. It was so dark during that time. She is saying that to come out on the other side and have a reason to be joyful, which was just to be alive during a time when there was no war, was enough. Wow. Okay. And she's saying, so she took full advantage of the joy that people wanted to experience, and she allowed herself to feel the joy. Huh. It's interesting. She was giving me this, I was seeing this energy of kind of from her childhood into and through the First World War, and just how dark and heavy it was. And then she was saying about that, about what she was showing me, that she is so grateful that she had such a dark and miserable childhood, because her life during the war did not seem quite as miserable, because it was kind of all the same. She's saying it's like a watercolor painting where the gray just bleeds into more gray, and it doesn't seem very different. But then once the war ended, there was color brought to this painting, and she could be happy. And so she's saying that she's very grateful that her childhood was so miserable, and that she was rather desperate for joy, because then when it finally came, she appreciated it so much. It's interesting. Okay, I was asking about the fashion of the time and how it compared to the United States. She's saying that it was not so flamboyant, and it was not as progressive and promiscuous, she's saying, but it was progressive for high society that she was in, to show the shoulders and a more revealing neckline. That was something that had not been done previously, but now was happening more and more. She's saying after a French style of a rather loose bosom. What does that mean? Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay. She's describing that the front part of the dress, it's almost like the neckline sat kind of loosely, and so it wasn't so constricted. Things could move a little bit more, and so it was just it was more promiscuous, because more was revealed and more of the natural shape could be seen, more of the natural movement of the body and of the chest could be, and the shoulders could be seen and experienced. So it was far more sensual than previous fashion. And she's saying that she took great joy and pride in designing her own clothes with people in Paris, actually. So when she would go and stay in France, which she frequented often, she says, she would have her clothes made there and then come back and kind of bring that fashion with her, which was, she's saying, quite a contrast compared to the rest of Scotland, and particularly in the castle. There weren't that many people in the castle necessarily, other than people that she would know, but still, she stood out, so to speak, because of the fabrics and the colors and the cut. It just, all of it was very different than what was seen here. Interesting. She's saying, and so she actually enjoyed coming back to bring that with her, and she enjoyed kind of standing out. But then there came a time when it would become too dreary, and she would become kind of weary, like tired of the space, and so she would want to go. She would want to travel again. Okay. Okay, so I was asking if there was a particular story that she could share of an exciting time that she experienced. She's talking about a man in France who was part of, I guess, what we could say the high court, but the high society. Okay. So also he was a duke, and I can see that she's showing me they're at some kind of gathering or a party, I guess, a holiday of some kind, and he is playing cards at a table with two other men, and there are a few women. There are people all throughout the room, not overly crowded, but there are two women close to this man, and then one of them is kind of hanging over this piano that's not far from the card table, and he admits something, and I'm trying. It's funny. It's almost like I'm just noticing this. I'm seeing the scene. That's what she's giving to me rather than her telling me the story. And it's almost like there's too much embarrassment to even see what actually happened. But he is, oh, okay. I see. She wanted me to watch the scene rather than her explain it. This is very funny. So he is playing cards and he is very drunk, but he can really hold his alcohol. He doesn't look drunk at all, at all. I really would not have thought that he had been drinking anything, but he is incredibly drunk. And these two women who are standing near the table, just kind of watching the card game, one of them says something, and she's holding her hand over her mouth, and she says something, she whispers something to the person, or talks quietly, I guess, to the woman that she's standing next to. And in that moment, this man, the French man who's at the card table, almost falls backward out of his chair because he has peed himself, because he's peed his pants, and he's so drunk he doesn't realize that, and that's what she's whispering about. It's very funny. It's very embarrassing. I understand now why that would be. Yeah, that was I mean, this man in high society is funny. I feel almost embarrassed that I even saw that. And she said that's why I couldn't tell you the story. You had to see it because she also did not want to retell that story. It's really quite funny. Okay, sorry. That's a good story. That's great that you got to see that. Thank you for sharing. It's really funny. Wow. Yes, she's saying, so he promptly went upstairs to get changed. Did he come back? That's bold. He did come back, but it was like an hour more later. Okay, that's bold that he came back. Not embarrassed, I guess, enough to stay away from the party. Okay, it's his party, she says, so. That's really funny. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Okay, Well, Eileen Butler, is there anything that you can share that you want to share, that you feel like sharing, that maybe you've wanted to tell someone before? What comes to mind now? Sorry, she replied and she said, I've never thought about that before. So I asked her what comes to mind now, if you think about it, if you want to say anything. She is talking about not letting the little moments slip by. She says that that's really what kept her going when things would feel kind of hard or feel dull, is to not let the little moments slip by you. There are so many little moments throughout the day that can bring joy, that can bring a smile. And if you let them slip by, you're missing the chance to smile. And she says, smiling is the gift of each day that you give to yourself. And when you're with someone else, it's a gift for them to see you smile. So don't let the little moments pass you by and miss the opportunity of receiving the gift and giving it back to someone else. It's very nice. I needed those words. Well, thank you, Eileen Butler. It's been a joy, of course, to speak with you, and a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for sharing some of your story. My energy stays with me. Your energy stays with you. Well, that was really beautiful to connect with her. She has beautiful energy. It's soft and playful. She's, yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. This was a surprise, as it's turning out always is for me these days. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing more of Scotland with you. May you remember your magic today. Okay, still working on the days, but we're good. I was like trying to ask her birthday, and I was like, the 3rd, it's a winter month, 1890, okay? And I was like really trying to get it, and I was like, I can tell it's not accurate. Like I could feel it, and it wasn't. But I was very close.